She was screaming, high-pitched, terrified. Somewhere behind the hedges of a gated estate, a child's voice begged to be heard. Security rushed in, hands already on their weapons until they saw her. A little black girl, alone, afraid, and in their eyes, suspicious. Moments later, the homeowner arrived private jet still cooling on the tarmac only to find his daughter shaken, bruised, and branded an intruder in her own backyard. What he discovered next would shatter everything he believed about safety, privilege, and race. This is the story behind Billionaire comes home to his black adopted daughter's screams. Welcome, story lovers. Where are you watching from? Comment your city. Jonathan Pierce had it all: a tech empire, a penthouse overlooking Manhattan, and the kind of money most people only dreamed of. But none of it compared to the quiet joy of fatherhood. 6 years ago, he adopted Amara, a bright, curious black girl who lit up every room she entered. Their mornings were slow and sacred cereal, cartoons, and her endless questions about the world. To Jonathan, love was colorblind, but the world outside didn't always agree. Today was no different. Emails, meetings, stock updates. He sent Amara off to school like always, kissed her forehead, and returned to his empire. As he boarded his private jet for a quick business trip, he smiled, thinking of the handmade Father's Day card she tucked into his bag. But back in their suburban estate, something was off. And while Jonathan was miles away, a quiet storm had begun to rise, one that wouldn't wait for him to return. Asterisk, the first call came from the housekeeper's shaky voice, barely coherent. "Sir, you need to come home. Something's wrong with Amara." Jonathan's heart dropped. The jet hadn't even touched down when he ordered it turned around. Back at home, the picture came into focus. Amara had stayed behind after school for a science project. The neighborhood's new private security, hired by the homeowners association without his input, had been patrolling. That afternoon, they'd spotted her playing alone in their backyard treehouse. They didn't recognize her. She didn't look like she belonged. Two armed men approached a 10-year-old girl on her own property, hands on weapons, barking questions. Amara had screamed. One grabbed her arm, the other called for backup, reporting a possible intruder. She cried, told them her name, that this was her house, that her daddy was Jonathan Pierce. But they didn't listen. They never do. It wasn't until the nanny sprinted outside, shouting and waving IDs, that they backed off. But by then, Amara was trembling in tears, her favorite headband broken in the scuffle, tiny wrists bruised from being restrained for her safety. Jonathan returned to find police reports, security footage, and a child terrified to sleep alone. He watched the footage in silence. His daughter, treated like a criminal in her own home. But what shattered him wasn't the aggression. It was what one officer muttered on camera. Unaware of the mix still live, didn't know the rich guy had adopted one of those. Asterisk, Jonathan stood in the living room, watching the grainy footage loop again and again. Amara's scream echoed like a blade to the heart. Then his eyes caught it. The moment her tiny hands went up, mimicking what she must have seen on TV, hands raised, trembling, as two men loomed. She wasn't resisting. She was surviving. His fists clenched. Billionaire. Father. None of it mattered in that moment. The world didn't see her brilliance, her innocence. They only saw skin. He stared at the officer's face, frozen on the screen, smirking as he walked away, unbothered. And something in Jonathan broke. Not with rage, but resolve. This wouldn't end in silence. He wasn't just a father anymore. He was a witness. Dear audience, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to give it a like. It really helps. The following week, Jonathan stood before flashing cameras not as a CEO, but as a father demanding justice. He filed lawsuits, launched a foundation in Amara's name, and publicly called out the quiet, systemic racism embedded in even the safest communities. But no press release could erase his daughter's fear of her own backyard. Amara still flinches when strangers raise their voices. She asks if she's too dark to be safe. And Jonathan, once blind to the layers of her experience, now sees them everywhere. This wasn't just an isolated mistake. It was a mirror. A mirror that shows how easily a child's joy can be shattered by ignorance dressed as security. How many more Amaras before we change what we see? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories and new videos.